Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live. My name is Laila Martin Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am an organizer with the National Partnership for New Americans, also known as MPNA, and I am so excited to be with you all as we talk about the naturalization process and we answer questions about how to get this process started. For those of you who are not familiar with MPNA, we are a national coalition of over 60 immigrant and refugee rights organizations with reach across 40 states. Together, we lead local and state organizing campaigns. We also complement that advocacy with essential legal and education services rooted in community empowerment. Since our inception, naturalization has been a key focus of MPNA, from successfully advocating for fee waivers to reducing the citizenship application backlog or raising awareness of the benefits and importance of becoming a US citizen. Our network has proudly supported hundreds of thousands of immigrants in their journey to become US citizens with free or low cost naturalization clinics. Today's Facebook Live is part of the Naturalize NOW campaign, a campaign that aims to encourage all eligible US residents to apply for citizenship. In an effort to realize our vision of a truly inclusive and participatory democracy, we believe that increasing the number of naturalized citizens is a key strategy that will not only benefit immigrant and refugee communities, but our country as a whole. Naturalize Now campaign builds on the momentum of record-breaking naturalizations in 2022. Over 1 million immigrants became citizens in that year, the most in almost 15 years and the third highest number ever. I am proud to share that I am one of the million naturalized citizens who took that final step in 2022. 7 years ago, I immigrated to this country with my husband and infant son and began building a life in central Pennsylvania. Naturalizing was one of the most joyful moments of my life, as it meant to me that I could vote, among other things. But voting for me is among the most powerful expressions of fully belonging to the community that I am part of. Becoming a US citizen and voting for the first time last November was an experience that my entire family cherished. Since I arrived in the US 7 years ago, not only have I helped many immigrants become citizens, but I have also supported naturalized citizens in registering to vote. For instance, I enjoyed attending the naturalization ceremonies at the USCIS and sharing the joy, the pride, the celebration, and relief as immigrants from different countries took their oath to become US citizens. So as you can imagine, it is an honor for me to facilitate this conversation today about how to start the naturalization process and encourage all my eligible citizens to take the naturalization journey so we can secure the right to vote, so we can secure better career opportunities and deeper connection to our communities. So without further ado, let's get this started. And joining me today is Cristina Uribe Reyes from Uribe Reyes Law. Cristina, who I believe is a fellow naturalized citizen like myself, was born in Jalisco, Mexico, and migrated to the US at the age of 2. Cristina has navigated the immigration system herself and helped numerous family members to do so. She's also worked full-time as an immigration paralegal while going through law school. So it is a privilege to have Cristina with us today, answering all your naturalization-related questions, as she has this unique understanding when it comes to immigration matters, having been the client, the paralegal, and now the attorney. So welcome, Cristina. And I think we can start with one of the most important questions, and one that probably many people have: eligibility. So, what makes someone eligible for naturalization?
Well, first of all, thank you so much and congratulations on becoming a citizen. It's so great to hear stories like yours. For naturalization, so anybody that got married to a U.S. citizen and that's how they obtained their green card, as long as they're still married and living with that citizen, they're eligible to apply for naturalization after 3 years of becoming a resident. That includes 2 years of conditional resident if that was what they had. For everybody else, it's after 5 years of having a green card that you are eligible to apply for naturalization.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cristina. And I want to remind, like, we're going to have a few questions just to start the conversation, but please put your questions in the chat, as we're going to have some time, hopefully at the very end, so we can answer any questions that you may have related to the naturalization process. So, all right. So we know now who can apply. And we know that many people tuning in may already know if they are eligible, but maybe, some of us don't know exactly like what's next, or we may not have the funds to pay, or we lack the English language skills to be confident enough to take the test. Can you tell us, Cristina, like what help is out there for folks like that?
Of course, there is a fee waiver. So, for anybody that is eligible for that fee waiver, you can actually apply to get the fee waived. Right now, the current cost of the application fee is $725. 700 yes, $725. So you can actually have that waived if you need that. And then for anybody whose first language isn't, well, a lot of the people, but whose first language isn't English and they're scared of having to pass the English test, there are certain exceptions depending on how long you have been a resident and how old you are. So for those that are at least 50 years old and have had their green cards for at least 20 years, you can do the test in your native language. If you have had your green card for 15 years and you're at least 55 years old, then you can also do the test in your native language. And then for those that have had their green card for 20 years and are at least 65 years old, they can do the entire interview and test in their native language, and they will also be given a more simplified version of the civics test. So the normal civics test is 100 history and civics questions. For those that are 65 years old and have had their green card for 20 years, the test is only 25 questions that you actually have to study. It's the same thing. They will pick 10 out of those questions, but it's a lot less information that you have to learn.
All right, thank you for that. I remember preparing for that test, and having my cars, listening to the podcast in the car while I was dropping my son off to school. So I remember by the end of my preparation, my son, who is now 8 years old, he knew at least like 25-30% of those questions. I was listening to it all the time to be ready for the interview.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so I'm hoping that if there are folks out there that can have a little bit of help doing that, going through those questions. Let's make sure that they have that support.
Of course.
All right. So now, let's say like I know I'm eligible. I'm prepared with language and monetary requirements, and let's talk a little bit about the process, right? So what documents or information do people need to gather to get their process started, and what are kind of like the sequential steps of the process?
Yeah, so right now they're offering two options for those that are wanting to file. You can either file a paper application, just like it's been done every year since, or you can also file online. So USCIS has a system where you can create an account and you can actually file your application online. This is whether you hire an attorney or not, you can still do it this way. And it's normally they process those applications a little bit faster. The process in of itself is the same. It's just whether your information is going on paper or the computer. You don't really need many documents, but every case is different. Everybody is going to need a copy of their green card. There is also a new rule that just went into effect. So it used to be that if your green card was expiring in less than 6 months, you still had to renew that green card, because depending on whether you were in the country, the office might make you do that. Now, if your green card is expiring as long as you file your citizenship application, you will get an extension of the green card without having to file an application separately to renew that green card. So you can have that extension while you figure out the citizenship. Like I said, everybody will need a copy of the green card, and then from there, these aren't necessarily documents that you need to submit, but you do need to be prepared to figure out, make sure that you're current on your taxes. If there's any issues around child support, then you need to have those documents available. If there has been a divorce, they might ask you for your divorce decree. And then they'll ask you information about your employment for the last 5 years, or your schooling, where you have lived the past 5 years. You should also have a record of any trips that you have taken outside in the country 5 years before you file that application, because they will be asking you that. And then information about your children. All of your children anywhere in the world, you need to have that information. But really, the only documents that you need to file, at least initially with your application, is the green card. And then depending on the situation, you may or may not need to file some criminal documents if there have been any arrests, and divorce decrees, but definitely talk to an attorney before you file any of those documents.
Yeah, thank you so much. I remember my journey trying to gather all this information, especially like all those trips I used to make back home and trying to catalog all of them. That was a decent amount of time for us to gather all that stuff together. So,
Yes.
I want to remind folks, please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We have Cristina in here with an amazing experience and unique perspective on the topic. So please, let's use this time to ask any naturalization related questions that we have for her. Um, I have a few more questions that I've encountered while I was supporting folks doing their citizenship application, and I am not a lawyer. And I had questions more or less like about, like, a lot of people were, some people were asking me about, I have two kids who were not born in the United States. They have green cards, and they were asking me, like, do I have to pay for all of them to become U.S. citizens, or how is the process for kids as I'm becoming a U.S. citizen myself?
Yeah, so for kids, it depends on their age. If they're over the age of 18, 21, then they will have to do their own applications. But if they're minors and you, as their parent, become a citizen before they reach that age, then they are able to become citizens automatically. So you wouldn't actually be submitting an N-400, which is a citizenship application. You would be submitting a different application for them, so that once you're a citizen, they can automatically get their citizenship as well, without having to go through the application and testing process.
Awesome. Awesome. We have a question from the audience in here, and this person is asking, are there any accommodations for people with mental health issues, like, for example, anxiety?
There are accommodations depending on what the disability may be or what the health condition may be. There's different accommodations. Sometimes they're even able to do interviews like in the hospital, if that's something that needs to be done. There are also accommodations for people with some mental health conditions or some medical conditions where they're not able to retain new information. So even those that might not qualify to do the portion of the language test because of the time that they've had their green card or because of their age, they may still qualify for an exemption to the English language requirement or to the test itself, depending on what health conditions they may have. So that would require a separate application and an evaluation by a medical doctor, but there are certainly those accommodations. So I encourage you to talk to any other organizations, an attorney, to see if that is something that you would qualify for.
Yeah, I remember as well having, some questions around that, and filling that form and stuff like that. We have another question in here about, do you need to report speeding tickets? And is this limited to the 5-year period? And if I can add to that question as well, can we talk a little bit about what if some folks have some kind of like criminal offense on their record, and they are thinking about, like, oh, I'd rather not risk my green card. Should I even apply? So speeding tickets and then criminal records.
Yeah, so the application does ask about any detention or any encounters with law enforcement that can include speeding tickets. So that is something that you want to be prepared to answer. But it's not something, speeding tickets aren't necessarily something that will disqualify you from the M400, even if it's within the 5 year period. Definitely, if it's not within the 5 year period of the good moral character, you have to be prepared to know the dates, what the charges were, but it's not something that's going to disqualify you. Depending on the officer, some officers might not ask for more details and just say traffic tickets, not a big deal. Some officers will ask you to give a few more details just to include in the application, but again, it's not something that's going to disqualify you. In terms of anything a little bit more serious, more criminal issues, we're talking now DUIs, anything more than just a simple traffic ticket, you definitely need to talk to an attorney about that. There are certain criminal convictions that will disqualify you from citizenship, and there's some criminal convictions where they can either try to rescind your green card. So definitely very important for you to talk to somebody before you submit that application so that you can be prepared to know how to answer that, know whether it's a good time to apply. Because the other thing with criminal convictions is if you have an arrest, certain arrests, if it's within the last 5 years of you applying for citizenship, may disqualify you just because you were arrested. So it's the actual conviction isn't going to be something that disqualifies you from citizenship. It's just the fact that it happened in the last 5 years. So that's just a matter of timing, and you want to be prepared for that. The other thing that you really want to talk about, that you need to look at and talk to an attorney about, is if you ever accidentally register to vote, or sometimes it happens accidentally. Sometimes when we go to the DMV and get a license, the person at the DMV will register you to vote without knowing that you are not able to because you're not a citizen yet. So all of those issues is something that you need to be discussing with an attorney to make sure that it's not going to cause a problem. And then if it does come up, and when it does come up in the interview, you are prepared and know exactly how to answer those questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I have a few more questions coming from the audience, so please, we still have more time. Keep sending those questions. One of them is saying, if someone overstayed their visa and has been working and paying taxes and isn't marrying a U.S. citizen, what are the options to naturalize?
They would first need to get a green card, and you have to look at what options. So, marriage isn't the only way to be able to get a green card. You can have some other family petition. So, if you have parents that are U.S. citizens, if you have siblings that are U.S. citizens, um, spouses that are residents. So, there's a lot of other categories where family members can apply. There's also other options such as employment type visas where you might be able to get a green card. And then there's also options like asylum or other type of humanitarian aid. So it's not the only, marriage won't be the only way, but you need to talk to an attorney to see if you qualify for anything else to be able to get that green card. Remember, the green card is always the first step. Once you have that green card, it's 5 years after the green card, and 3 years if you got it through marriage to a U.S. citizen.
Right, right. Thank you for that important reminder. Always green card first. All right. We have another question in here. It asks, if are there any policies in place for COVID visa overstays?
I'm not exactly sure what it's referring to. Like if it's referring, if it's like a general policy when they're applying for a green card. It's not something necessarily that would come up during citizenship. So it would be more of an issue with a green card. And that's always going to be very case by case specific. So there's no general policy necessarily. It's a case by case determination.
Right. Awesome. One more question. What happens? I'm eligible. I apply. I go to my test, and I don't pass the test on my first try. Can I take it again? What's the process? Am I disqualified? What happens in there?
Yeah, so if you don't pass the test either because of the English, the writing, the any part of it, or even if they're requesting more, if it's for any of those reasons, then what they're gonna do is they're gonna give you a sheet of paper that says you didn't pass today because of whatever the reason may be. And then they're gonna give you a second interview. So you actually get two chances if you don't pass because of English or writing or reading or any of that. Normally send the second interview notice within anywhere, I would say, 4 to 6, 8 weeks. It just depends on the office and where you're applying in the country. But as soon as they're available, they'll send you the second interview. At the second interview, you have a second opportunity. If once again you don't pass, then they'll just deny you. The denial doesn't mean that you can't apply again. You could literally turn around and apply that same day or the next day, but you will have to pay the fee again and go through the process of waiting and getting your interview again. If you do pass on the second try, then that's it. You're good. You passed and you're able to become a citizen.
That's great. That's great. Um, we have another question here from the audience saying, if someone overstayed their visa due to her mom having an illness, does she have to leave or can she apply to stay?
There's actually, so for those that are here, depending on the type of visa, let's assume that it's a visitor visa. There is a way to get an extension on your stay. So definitely something to talk about with an attorney to see if you qualify for that extension. And it also is going to depend on when it was that the overstay happened. Typically, those extensions need to be filed before the overstay happens. So something to talk about. There is a way to extend those stays, especially in situations such as this, but something that you need to work on ASAP.
All right, we still have maybe time for one more question. So hopefully, folks can use the last 2 minutes that we have with Cristina to answer our questions about naturalization and the process. I like a general question: how can folks now they know they're eligible, they think they are ready? How can they get the process started? Like, where do folks need to go?
It depends on how comfortable they are on doing this process by themselves, whether this is something that they want to do themselves or they want to work with an attorney or with an organization. All over the country, NPNA, there's a bunch of other organizations that can help with this process. They will work with attorneys to be able to help you fill this out. So it's just a matter of you looking up in depending on your state an organization if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, contact an attorney, do a consultation. You can decide from there if you think that you are comfortable enough doing it on your own or whether you want to take an attorney with you throughout this whole process.
Wonderful. And one more question that just came in the chat here. They're asking, like, what if I never sign up for selective service?
It's a requirement that anybody in the US or from the ages of 18 to 26 need to apply for selective service for men. If you didn't apply for the selective service, it's not something that's going to get you outright denied from citizenship, but it is something that you're going to have to explain at the interview of why you didn't apply or um, why you didn't register for the selective service. So, something to talk about again, not something that will disqualify you. So, nothing, you don't have to be afraid of that part.
All right. Well, I think we're getting to the end of our conversation today and answering some questions about the naturalization process. Cristina, I do want to thank you so much for your time and answering all these questions about the naturalization process and immigration related matters. Before I close out, Cristina, would you like to add anything before I say goodbye to our audience?
I would just encourage everybody to become a citizen. Become a citizen as soon as you're able to, as soon as you feel comfortable passing this test. The green card isn't permanent, even though it has the word permanent in it. It's not. You could lose it if you're outside of the country for too long. If you get convicted of certain criminal issues, you can lose it. And so it's definitely something to look at. Then we also have, you can vote. There's so many more rights that come with being a citizen. So it's the last step in your process of coming here. And then I think the last thing is we're expecting the fees to go up at some point. Not sure exactly when. It's probably going to come sometime next year. So don't wait. until they announce it. Get it done as soon as you're eligible, as soon as you're able to.
Thank you, Cristina, so much. So, to
Thank you so
all
much.
eligible citizens, as you heard, Cristina, the time is now. The time is now to naturalize for all these reasons, because free are gonna increase. We don't know when, but we know they're gonna increase, and it may be a big jump from what we're paying right now, because we want to have access to better career opportunities, because we want to bring our family, because we want to have the right to vote. There are many reasons why we decide to take on this journey. So please, the time is now to naturalize, and the MPNA family is looking forward to rolling up our sleeves and working together so we can increase the number of people naturalizing, particularly ahead of the consequential 2024 election cycle. By increasing the number of people getting naturalized, we can make sure our community voices are heard, so we can fully participate in our democracy and can help shape our future. If you don't know where to begin this process, you don't know where to begin your naturalization journey, please go to our website, newamericanvoters.org, for more information. And thank you all very much for being with us. Have yourself a great evening, and looking forward to hearing about your stories, about your naturalization journey, and having next year even more than we had in 2022. Thank you all very much.